All right, 134, San Diego Sports Leaders, the Mighty 1090. I am Darren Smith. With you up until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Scott Kaplan, Billy Ray Smith at that time. Can't wait to ask B.R. Smith what it was like when he got recruited to Arkansas and how many different programs out there sent B.R. Smith a letter saying, oh, we'd love for you to come here. And those are some of the crazy days. When they'd done 30 for 30s on those days back in the old Southwest Conference there, teams and Trans Ams and everything else. Who knows what was going on back then? I mean, sure we only know about half the story. But today's the day where a lot of you probably woke up and said, hey, this is exciting. We love college football. We pay attention to this. This has become a big business now. Recruiting, high school recruiting, getting set for national letter of intents, having them faxed into different programs, different offices all around the country. It is National Signing Day. ESPN is going wall to wall on ESPNU if this is your thing. I said it earlier. I don't follow the high school game, but I do have an interest in college football. I think it's always more interesting when you see the dust settle and you get a chance to hear different coaches talk about what they got, what they didn't get, see people come out with these rankings, and then who knows? You have to put pads on and helmets on, and who knows the way these guys respond when they're away from home for the first time. So with that being said, locally here, San Diego State, you just heard it in Bobby Woo's update, signed 24 different players today. And Rocky Long is the head coach at San Diego State. We should say congratulations to Rocky Long as well. He signed an extension through 2017. He joins us now via the Western Exterminator Hotline. Coach, good to talk to you. This is Darren Smith. Congratulations on the extension. First things first.
I appreciate it, Darren. I mean, the guy my age that gets an extension, that's a really good deal.
I would say so. I'd say that's a good deal no matter what your age is there as well. And I guess I got to ask right out of the gates, does that have anything to do with what this day represents? Does that have anything to do with making sure everybody knows that this is a stable football environment as it relates to the head coach?
Well, I think it makes a little bit of a difference, because you get into the recruiting battles and you start using anything and everything and every little thing you can to try to convince a guy that they want to go to a place or they don't want to go to a place. And I think that was asked to some of our recruits how long I was going to be the head coach and that sort of thing. So it might have made a difference with some of them, probably not a bunch of them, but some of them.
So, and that's exactly what it is. Now at least they know that you are signed to be the head coach here, at least as long as it's going to take them to get through college. And I think that's a very reassuring thing, not only for kids, but probably for parents as well.
I think it's more so for parents, but they're influencing their kids, so it all works together.
Well, Rocky, I said right before you came on, I wasn't going to ask a ton of specifics about these players because I'm not sure how many people in the audience really know who they are. And frankly, I'm not sure that I know exactly who they are. But I guess I'll start by asking you this, because you've been around college football for a long time. You played at New Mexico in 1969. What was it like? How did you get to New Mexico? And how did you get recruited to that football program?
Well, things have changed dramatically. I didn't get recruited out of high school. I played in a high school all-star game in August. New Mexico had a brand-new coaching staff, and they had some scholarships left over, so they sent the coaches out to all the high school all-star games. I was the only one in the all-star game that did not have a scholarship at the time. I guess I played okay because they offered me a scholarship, and I showed up.
And so who was most responsible for you getting there? Was there a specific coach? Was it a position coach? Was it somebody else in the program?
Yeah, I was a position coach that was there at the All-Star game, and he, in those days, I guess it was legal because he took my dad and I out to breakfast the next morning and said they had a scholarship for me, and I said, well, that's great, and he says, do you know where Albuquerque is? And I said, no, and he said, can you find it? And I said, sure, and he said, we start practice in 4 days.
So I think the statute of limitations has probably expired on that, by the way, so we're not going to get New Mexico in any trouble. And that's really how it worked. I mean, did you know, when you were playing football, you mentioned you were the only player in the All-Star game that got selected to go to a big program, or a major program, I should say. I mean, was that a big deal? I mean, did people follow high school athletes as they made this transition from high school into college?
Nothing like they do now. I mean, the recruiting game has changed dramatically. I mean, with the ability to evaluate thousands of players on the internet and scouting services and all those sort of things, it's gotten much more technical. There's a much more involvement with other people other than coaches and college coaches, high school coaches, and parents. There's a lot more scouting services out there. There's a lot more gurus out there that'll tell you who you're supposed to take. There's a lot of people giving kids stars, a number of stars that tells you how good they are, and it is so much different than it was back then.
Did you want to go someplace? Like if I could have taken you back to Rocky Long as a high school senior and I could have said you could go any place in the country, where would you really like to play football?
Well, at the time I was a UCLA fan, but I think I had no chance whatsoever to be recruited by UCLA.
How come?
Well, because I was too little, too slow, and not good enough.
And why UCLA?
I don't know. Just I think at the time Gary Beeman was the quarterback, and I like Gary Beeman.
And he's a Heisman winner, so you picked a good guy as well. That's the only UCLA Heisman Trophy winner, right?
I don't know about that, but he was the Heisman Trophy winner then, yeah.
We're talking to Rocky Long, head coach at San Diego State. It's National Signing Day all across college football. Coach, what do you think about where recruiting is now? What do you think about everything you just talked about? A lot of us woke up this morning and we flipped on ESPN, and you had kid after kid after kid holding press conferences. What do you think about the whole the spectacle that this has become?
Well, first of all, I think it's gotten out of hand, and I think it's too bad for the young people involved. I think that we start recruiting them, and the rules are changing where we can actually physically recruit them as juniors starting this year. In the past, you could only call seniors, you could only recruit seniors, but we start recruiting them tomorrow. I mean, we start recruiting the next class tomorrow. You get in the summer, some kids commit to you, that sort of thing. All these scouting services are evaluating, giving them rankings and ratings, and they start getting recruited by a number of schools. I think it really takes the luster off their last year of high school football. I think there's pressure on kids to play well. There's pressure on kids to make decisions. There's pressure for them to be on TV and do press conferences and all that. And I think one of the happiest days of my life were the days I played high school football on Friday night with my buddies, and I think a lot of that's been lost with the way recruiting's gone.
What's a day like today like for a college football coach? You get some verbal commitments there. As we know in the process, you're never allowed to comment on those guys until they officially sign. What's it like today? I mean, does every college coach in the country wake up a little bit worried, a little bit nervous, a little bit wondering what's going to happen and what's not going to happen?
Yeah, I think we do. I think you go to bed the night before signing date, and you've contacted every player that's verbally committed, and every single one of them has told you that they're going to sign with you the next day. But my experience is that not every one of them signs with you the next day. That there's a lot of things happen between your phone call and maybe several phone calls after you made yours, and so you get up a little nervous and wonder if you're going to get them all or not get them all. But I think it's a bit of a relief when the day is done and you have the signed papers in hand, and you can mention who's going to be an Aztec the next few years. Hopefully the next 4 or 5 years are going to make a huge difference in our program. And so it's kind of a relief. I think it's exciting for the players. I think it's exciting for fans. And now we've got to worry about whether they can really play or not.
How many verbals did you lose this year? Did you lose any?
Yeah, we over the process we lost I think 5 or 6 guys that had verbally committed to us. Now, not all in the last day or the last minute, but I think we had 5 or 6 players that were verbally committed to us that decommitted or changed their mind somewhere along the recruiting process.
And do they explain that decision to you? Do they owe you an explanation on that front?
Well, I personally think it's the manly thing to do, to call up a coach and say, hey, I'm changing my mind, and this is why, and give the coach that you verbally committed to an opportunity to maybe change your mind or hear what the reasons are, and if they're good reasons, wish you good luck. But there's a lot of times now that they just don't tell you. They just stop taking your phone calls, stop taking your emails, and you hear through the grapevine or on a scouting service on the internet that he's changed his mind.
How often do you hear, as a head coach, something that really annoys you about another college coach? You don't have, obviously, I'm not asking you to name names, but how often do you hear something during the recruiting process that really just gets under your skin that you hear about another coach in college football?
I don't think anything about a coach. Programs, I think, get under your skin some when you hear some of the stories coming from recruits or coming from out on the recruiting trail on how some programs approach the recruiting process, and I think some of them are a little sneaky, a little slimy, and that kind of bothers you and gets under your skin a little bit, but there's nothing you can really do about it, and so you don't worry about it and go about your way.
So do you mean people that are outside the program who maybe put a little bit of pressure on kids or have influence with kids?
Well, I think that's happening more and more and more, but I think some of the schools on some of the ways they recruit. I mean, you're only supposed to see a kid a certain number of times. You're only supposed to make so many phone calls, this and that, and obviously they're not abiding by those same rules.
We're talking to Rocky Long, head coach at San Diego State. So tell us, Coach, what it was like during this specific recruiting period where you were in the Mountain West, then you're in the Big East, and then you're back in the Mountain West. How did that work in terms of explaining that to kids and explaining that to families? Did you notice that people looked at you differently when you were in the Big East versus when you were in the Mountain West? And then did you have to go back to them and explain why you were in the Mountain West? What role did the conference stuff matter?
Well, no, I think that, and might sound strange to people, I think that's the best thing that happened to us. When people thought we were going to the Big East, we got all kinds of interest from places that we don't normally recruit or we've never recruited before. And people were contacting us. I mean, players and high school coaches, they were contacting us, and we went about our business by finding the best players we thought we could recruit. And some of it was the interest that they could play close to home. And then as things changed and we went back to the Mountain West, I thought that might make a huge difference to the kids that we'd been recruiting since they thought we were going to be in the Big East. It made no difference to them whatsoever because they'd already seen San Diego and they'd already seen San Diego State and they'd learned about our program. And what it has done is opened up some recruiting areas to us that had not been open to us before. So I think we can recruit more nationally now than we did before. And by the class we signed, I mean, we've got 8 or 9 different states that are represented in the class we signed, and I think the more possibilities you have out there to recruit, the better chance you have to get good players.
So it helped you open the door for areas that you might not have gone before, or to get in contact with programs and schools and players that you might not have had contact with before. That's what the Big East did.
Exactly.
Yeah, I noticed it too because I'm looking up and down the list of players that you signed today. You got a Louisiana, you got a Texas, you got a Missouri, you got an Illinois, a kid out of Chicago. What's the furthest that you personally have to go during recruiting?
Well, we took a kid out of Florida. Now, that was kind of a last-minute deal, but Florida is probably the furthest away.
Florida, huh? I mean, and you personally go on all these different recruiting. Have you seen all of these kids personally?
Well, some not in their homes, all of them. We see all of them personally when they come on official trips. But do you go out and see most of them in their hometown or at their high school or in their homes?
Wow, that is something else. As far as it goes for the whole class, for all 24 of them, how do you feel about the class as a whole?
Well, I think that it's an upgrade over the last 2 years, but that is based purely on what I've seen out of high school tape. You never really know, and no coach is ever going to say he had a bad recruiting class, but now that they're signed, I can tell you the truth. You never know how good the class is until they get here and you actually see them compete against the guys you have on your team. And it's more about what they do 2 or 3 years from now if they continue the program in the right way and they can develop as players. But on high school, just on high school tape, I think we've upgraded a little bit.
Do the parents expect you to be more than a coach for their sons?
Some do, some don't. I mean, it's the range of things. Some expect us to be totally in charge and make their young man a man, and some of them are so involved with their players, sometimes you have to tell them it's not Little League.
How do they ask more about education or more about trying to get to the professional ranks?
That kind of comes and goes too. And the parents are more into education than the players are, and we would not recruit a player if his ultimate goal wasn't to play in the NFL, even though very few of them get to. We want them to have that goal. Most of them, when they come to San Diego State, realize that they have to be serious about their education because when you get 70,000 applicants to a school, the way to reduce the number that are admitted is by grade point average and test scores. So our athletes that we sign are coming in here knowing they're competing against really, really good students, so they have to be serious about the education.
Last thing I'll ask you, I just wonder, you've had success not only there in football for the last couple of years, but the basketball program has also had national success as well. Has a successful athletic program, does that matter? Or does it matter when you're out there recruiting that it's not only about one football program, but it's also about several other athletic successful programs there at State?
Yes, it matters. It matters a lot. I think that any kind of exposure, positive exposure your school gets, no matter what the sport, it helps all the other programs here at San Diego State. And everybody that gets into national tournaments and everybody that plays on a national scene or national TV, that helps all of us.
Well, Coach, congratulations. Another signing day in the books. Appreciate the time and really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it, Darren. Thanks.
Thank you. Rocky Long stopping by there.